We should be aware that we are in an ashram. And an ashram is supposed to be a place of meditation, repose, quiet, introspection, and relaxation all round. It comes from the word Shreyas. You know, in the philosophies we have two types of welfare, Shreyas and Preyas. Preyas is of the worldly welfare, you know, like having a family, connubial bliss, material possessions, progress, children, grandchildren, you know, that sort of thing. That is Preyas. Shreyas is where one has a spiritual life of inner well-being, a composed comportment, balanced existence, neither good nor bad, but in between. Illat, killat, zillat being predominant, which, as I explained, means not too much money, or rather little less than what we should need, little less than good health, and lot of critics. So that is the spiritual life. And this concept, Lalaji Maharaj and Babuji Maharaj have modified, that even this is not correct, because then either you are Preyas or you are Shreyas. And the Preyas lives in the world, among the worldly people, becomes a worldly person himself, with his concentration all on material welfare, material pleasures, material well-being. The Shreyas people go off into the hills, sit under trees like this one, meditate, to the exclusion of the world. They obtain liberation or not, we don't know. Many were supposed to have been eaten up by tigers. Many died when they went to the Ganga for their bath early morning. And many were not known of later, and many, of course, surfaced much later in history as great rishis and sages. My master always said that a man of spirituality has to live in this world also, whether in a jungle or in a teeming city with its huge population, with its material offerings, its temptations, its accidents. And he has to balance his existence between the two. No rishi can live without eating, bathing, and going to the toilet. Three fundamental needs of all human beings, whether saint or sinner, whether poor or rich. So Sahaj Marg is a balance between Shreyas and Preyas. An inner life of Shreyas, an outer life of moving away out of Preyas, more and more, towards Shreyas, but ultimately culminating in a physical life which demands the minimum of physical material welfare and goes on towards inner peace, inner calm, inner satisfaction, inner harmony, towards the goal of human life, which is perfection. So the teaching of Sahaj Marg is quite different, often, from the teaching of traditional Veda or the traditional yoga, yogic systems, yogic philosophies. We don't seek exclusion or exclusive peace for ourselves. We seek peace for the whole world. When this question of service came up, you know, in India, traditionally, poor feeding, giving clothes to the poor, these are supposed to be very meritorious deeds enjoined by the scriptures. Babuji said this anybody with money can do. He is not necessarily holy. When a man reaches 45, 50 years of age, he begins to think of, the other world, and mostly out of guilt, they start putting their millions back into temples, dharmshalas, etc. He said that is neither charity nor service. They are only, trying to shrug off their guilt, hoping that this will compensate for all the evils which they did when amassing their ill-gotten wealth. No. Service, he said, if you can bring calmness to another human being, even momentarily, that is higher than the highest service enjoined upon you by the scriptures. So we meditate not for ourselves. Initially, yes. Initially, we do everything for ourselves. This might sound like selfishness to minds not trained to accept truths which are quite divergent from their cultures, where they say no selfishness. This is not selfishness. This is self-isness. Myself must be. It is not yet. Myself is dormant, asleep. So they say, Uttrishta, wake up. I am telling myself. Jagrata, awaken, get up, awaken. Not just get up and bleary-eyed, do that. Awaken and rest not till the goal is achieved. So this prayer or this injunction or this order is given to myself by me. That is the start of civilization, a yogic civilization, a spiritual civilization, first with the individual as we understand it here in India. Once you have achieved something, then starts the process of giving to others. The most famous culmination in all our ceremonies, marriages, birthday parties were traditionally celebrated according to scriptures. Shashtiyam Purti or the completion of 60 years, Shatabhishekam or the completion of 8 years, is Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. May all people be happy, and calm and peaceful. Sarve Jana, all people, everywhere. There is no distinction of man or woman. There is no distinction of color. There is no distinction of caste. There is no exclusion. In fact, the word Gopala, which is often used for Lord Krishna, is loosely translated as a cowherd, he who protected cows, because Go means cow. But in a higher context, Go means life. So the protector of life, Krishna is not merely a cowherd. He is the protector of all life everywhere. Therefore, he is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, who is the protector among the triumvirate of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. He is the protector supreme. The avatars are protectors for their particular yugas. So this is at the foundation of Indian culture, Indian philosophy, Indian spirituality. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu, Sarvam Mangalani Santu. May there be, how do you translate Mangalam? Propitiousness, prosperity to all. So you see, often Babuji was asked the question, but Babuji, are you not selfish when we only meditate for ourselves? Babuji said, look here, I am telling you, you start with yourself. You can't give anything until you have it. There is no use telling a beggar, distribute your wealth. He will say, what, you are making a mockery? Or you are trying to have a joke at my expense? What can a beggar do? You elevate him in society, give him a craft or a trade, then you can ask of him 1 rupee for every 100. Isn't it? So you see, that is the secret of the Hindu tradition, the Sanatana Dharma tradition. Sanatana means eternal. Hinduism is not a religion for today or yesterday or tomorrow. It is a religion or a philosophy or a way of life for all time. Yuga Yuga Paryantam, they say, Yuga after Yuga. It is not in our temples. Temples are the grossest form. They are meant for people who cannot conceive of a God within. So they are given idols to worship and said, this is your God, worship him, hoping that he will come out of this kindergarten of worship into something higher, recognize that this is only a symbol of the Almighty and worship or the Almighty through the symbol, and graduate into spirituality. That's why Babuji said, where religion ends, spirituality begins. So religion has a beginning and an end. The beginning is the grossest, sthula worship, as we say, physical worship of idols, of icons, of places, like Ayodhya, where Rama was supposed to have been born. From that you graduate into without temple worship, sit down and meditate. From that you graduate into no meditation, but constant remembrance. But constant remembrance is not the be-all and end-all of spirituality. That too has to go. When you come to a stage, whom am I remembering? There's that famous story of Radha, Krishna's beloved. Once Lord Krishna was away, she was so sad and felt the separation so much that she started saying Krishna, 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 remembrance. And she became Krishna and started saying Radha, 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 Radha. So constant remembrance transforms you into the one remembered. He is there at your side. As Babuji said, remember me and you will find me by your side. But that too is transcended, because now, as Babuji or Lalaji said about Babuji, I am you and you are me. So that none shall say that there is any difference between us. Now who is to remember who? Must Babuji remember Lalaji? Because he will become Lalaji. Then who remembers whom? Lalaji cannot remember himself. So remembrance ceases. Now comes that divine miracle, that divine blessing, that divine grace in its plenitude. The two are one. No more identities, no more seeking, no more seeker. As I read out yesterday from Babuji's words, where the seeker, the seeking and the sought all become one. So this is a very short description of what Sahaj Marg is, what our ashrams are for. Our ashrams are precisely for this, not to bicker for position, not for mooching under conveniently shaded trees in the fall of the evening. They may be amenable to all this, but they are not for it. These places are meant for holy approach. What the Germans, I believe, call Heilige, of which the Western cultures are largely ignorant. By going into church and doing this, it's no more holy than putting your slippers somewhere and worshipping them. I was once in Madurai, and I was taking a walk in a large field, agricultural field. They had these markers, for property, stones. One fellow was putting this red paste on it, using flowers and worshipping. I just stood there. I said, "You are worshipping this stone?" Of course, he took umbrage, He said, "Do you mean to say God is not in it? You are from the city?" I said, "Well, I am unfortunate, I have to live in a city. But even if I were here, I wouldn't worship this stone." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Why is there a stone in the temple for you to worship?" "Well, why not? If that is a stone and you worship, why not this?" I said, "You asked the correct question. Neither should be worshipped." "Ah, you are a Nastika, is it? City-bred, educated Nastika." I said, "Well, you are obviously a Nastika. You are a believer. And now, these slippers, is God not in it?" "What do you mean?" I said, "God is everywhere. Prahlada's father kicked a pillar, Lord, they came out of it. Why don't you worship my slippers? If you believe in what you think you believe, please worship this in my presence and I will say you are a bhakta. Don't annoy me or I'll beat you up." I said, "I only came to offer some advice. Take it or leave it." You see? So they are believers. And as I told you, one of my friends was traveling by train from Chariji to Madras. About 45 minutes out of Chariji, you cross a river, big river, near Ariyalur. There were people washing clothes on the river bank on stones, washing stones. And in this train, there was a padri with about 30 children, all Catholics. And they were looking at that and saying, "Father, look what they are doing." He said, "Yes, children, the Hindus are stupid. They are corrupt. See that stone, they are washing clothes on, and in the temple they worship it." And then my friend was in that group, not part of it, happened to be seated there. And they looked at him and started laughing. He said, "I don't know your name, Mr. Priest, But why are you laughing at me? He said, well, look at your religion. Stupid, don't you think? Washing clothes here, spitting somewhere on it, using it as tools for your toilet, and worshipping it in a temple. Don't you think it's stupid? He said, well, you know, I can't argue with you. But he said, what do you Westerners do when you meet? He said, we shake hands. Why? It's our culture. He said, why don't you shake legs instead? Legs are not meant to be shaken. They're dirty, filthy things. Yes, but they're part of your body. No? Why should any part of your body be so dirty that you can't shake it? He meant something else. I didn't mention it. He said, if everything is the same, it is convention for us. You know, we are not stupid. We are Christians. We shake hands. And that's about it. He said, no, that's not about it. There are many things you can shake. And it is not illogical or unlawful. You can just say, but brother, it's a part of the body. What matters it if I shake this part or that part? They were terribly annoyed with him, and they got out at the next station frowning. So we had a big laugh when he told me the story. This is the sort of partisan thinking, bipartisan thinking, tripartisan thinking, hypocrisy, you know, prejudices. And they worship a cross made of wood or gold or diamonds, it doesn't matter. It's as much a symbol, a material symbol of some spiritual existence, highly spiritualized existence. Oh, that is the divine cross on which our holy Son of God was crucified. So how does it become holy? He was, but this need not be, you know. On the contrary, you should wail every time you see a cross and say, my God, this is what our beloved Son of the Father was crucified upon. You worship this? So this is the sort of, you know, the arguments, interreligious, they crop up, they breed hatred, they breed divisiveness among societies, they create wars. So when you come to an ashram like ours, you see, this is to give you peace. This is to give you a certain sanctity, that this is a place where you don't have ulterior thoughts, ulterior motives, where you don't have thoughts other than of, you know, goodness, holiness, and of consummation with the divine, where you eat little, you breathe well, you bathe in fresh, clean water, and you devote all your spare time to introspection, to meditation, and to doing whatever else you have to do, write your diary, read books. In short, not educate yourself, but ennoble yourself, spiritualize yourself. That's why we build these ashrams. Many people ask, why ashrams, for heaven's sake? You will find these in some of the blogs, you know, in Europe. Why ashrams? Chari comes only to collect money for more ashrams, more and more ashrams. If they did understand, you see, that in India, in the old days, you know, we used to have our farms fertilized by having a whole flock of sheep tied up on the field for 3 nights, so that all that cow dung or goat, you know, things should be on the fields, and it was a natural fertilizer. We had good crops. Then the owner of the, or the shepherd of the flock took it to the next field for 3 nights. He made a little money, the field owner benefited, agriculture went well, there was no toxins in the food that we ate, no. Because after all, everything must do something else. Everything is food for something else, says the Vedas, you know. Sarvam annam. Everything is food. This is food for that, that is food for that, that is food for that. You find an echo of this sentiment in Shakespeare, yes, you know, in the graveyard scene. And in Omar Khayyam, he says, from what lips which were kissed 1,000,000 times does this rose spring up? You know? So there's a recycling in nature of material resources. There's no such thing as ugly or smelly or nasty. What you excrete becomes fertilizer for something else, food for something else. I remember my European counterpart once traveled with us to Madurai, Virudunagar, and he saw the pigs, you know, eating human excreta. He said, my God, they eat this? I said, well, you know, tigers eat raw meat, they just kill a deer and eat it. What is inside the intestine of that deer when it is eaten? And I said, Germans eat sausages. What did they contain, those sausages? Isn't it? He could not, you know, he was speechless. He didn't know how to answer my question. I said, Sarvam Annam, says the Vedas. Exactly as I told you today, I told him the same thing. This is what happens. There is an eternal recycling. Only the soul passes through without transformation, life after life, because it was and is and shall ever be a part of divinity. Only the soul goes through this universe in its timeless, eternal existence. It is timeless, not through all time. It is timeless because it has gone beyond the limits of time. It has no space, therefore it goes beyond the limits of space. Space and time do not bind the soul as they do not bind God. Therefore they have no form, no name, no attributes. Neither God nor the soul. The soul never sins. Then what sins? The body. All virtues and vices, pleasure and pain reside here in the body. Then why do we have a body when we are pure, eternal souls without any of these attributes? People ask Babuji. He said, you know, God wants to do a supreme job of divinizing everything. And when the first soul got ego, same as the Christian tradition, the fall of Lucifer, you know, into Satan, ego, I can do it. From there started the need to go back. Sahaj does not speak of virtue and vice, no sins. He said when this ego separated it from the divine kingdom, it had to now unseparate itself from divinity, and therefore comes this need to do, to practice, to merge. This is like a lost child going back to its home. No sin, no virtue, no blame, no praise. It is a fact that it has strayed. It's the bigger fact that it has to come back home where it belongs. So Sahaj Marg, spiritual journeys, yatras, whatever you may call them, are nothing but the soul which has separated itself from home, from its divine home, trying to get back to that home.